Jennifer Goodman, and I'm the current artist in residence here at the Australian Tapestry Workshop. For those of you that may not know, painting is my main medium. Collage also features in my work. I'd like to say how much I'm enjoying my residency here. I'm feeling energised and stimulated by being in this creative, light-filled and aesthetically stunning environment. I'm sure this experience of exploration, experimentation and adaptation will feed positively into my art practice and may predict the introduction of textiles as a medium in my future work.
Yes.
Colour is very important to me. In my painting practice, I have over 100 tubes of oil paint laid out in order on my work table. And yet I find that every time I go to use a colour, which I can see vividly in the colour chart in my head, I can't find a corresponding colour in my selection of paint. I therefore find that I specifically mix most of the colours I use. One of the things that attracted me to applying for a residency here was the potential use of a vast selection of colours in a medium that was new to me. I was enthused by the idea of colour mixing using different threads. However, things which I do so readily in my painting practice don't necessarily translate to tapestry as easily as I had expected. The successful blending of colour by the use of many different coloured threads is a reflection of the skills of the weavers here. This residency has offered me an environment where I'm working with other creative people. This provides an energy which feeds into a positive output. My usual work practice and environment is solitary. It's just a corner of my studio. I'm lucky enough to have a beautiful studio in our back garden where I spend my days. I love this space and my days there. I work alone, but no one works in a vacuum. I don't refer to other artists when working, but we're all accompanied consciously or not by our influences. When thinking of those whose shoulders I ride on, some in particular come to mind. Rothko, Matisse, Joseph Albers, Mondrian, Reinhardt, Agnes Martin, Bryce Martin, Morandi, Gauguin, Edvard Munch, Miro, earlier artists Velasquez, much earlier artists Fra Angelico, Filippo Lippi, and Della Francesca, Australian artists Ralph Paulson, Grace Crowley, and the list goes on. In the mid-90s, I did a fair bit of life drawing and used the drawings as a basis for my often figurative paintings. Even then, my painting was focused on tone and flat planes of colour, positioned and juxtaposed in the space of the composition. It was this and not the subject I was representing that was important to me. From there, I naturally moved into non-objective abstraction, which is where I've stayed. As pure abstraction, my work is an exploration of the senses. Like music, it can't be explained, it needs to be experienced. I started exhibiting my work in the year 2000 at John Buckley Gallery, with 2 paintings being included in the show Recent Geometric Abstraction, Robert Jackson Beyond. This one. I spent about 14 years in my geometric abstraction period. This work gave me a framework to adhere to the principles by which I work. Stability, moderation, harmony and structure, while still exploring colour, tone and composition. My work develops through a slow, thoughtful process. I paint in thin layers and it's the build-up of these that give the painting its ultimate surface. Some parts of my paintings appear to have veils of transparent colour, but they're actually carefully mixed opaque tones that give the illusion of transparency. When creating this effect, the tone needs to be correct, but there's leeway with the choice of colour. Sometimes using unexpected colour in the situation can add interest and create some visual tension. Those paintings are interesting. Each of those paintings has got 49 colours in it. I think they sit kind of comfortably because the tones are correct and where I want them to be, so that it doesn't give you that impression. Even though my composition's colours are flat and defined, I don't see them as hard-edged or blocked in, but rather see the tone of each shape almost transitioning into the next, and the shapes appearing to blend. Over the years, my palette has become more robust, not through intention, but as a natural development. I decided early on not to use masking tape in the painting of my work. In principle, I've no problem with this, with its use, but I prefer to use a freehand brush. I believe the viewer's eye sees the line as straight, but the brain feels its wobbliness, which gives the work a more organic feel and a slower visual take. The end of my geometric abstraction period came with the completion of my show Ocular Spectra in 2010. My paintings had become consistently more complicated, and some compositions were moving into angles and away from the grid. I finished that show and went to start again, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I felt I'd totally exhausted everything I had to say in that direction. It was time to find something new. The challenge of breaking out of the grid was extremely difficult because it was so much who I was and it had become my identity. With the grid at work, every line moved to the edge of the canvas and continued around it. The imagery was metaphorically tied down to the edges, and I felt the level of accuracy was becoming excruciatingly mathematical. My move to a more biomorphic, organic composition came because I was truly ready. Working with organic forms was like cutting the ties that held the grid together. Cutting them gave me a freedom. My work is still precise, the composition still consists of defined flat areas of colour, but I don't feel the restrictions and feel I can go anywhere with it. The transition acted as an explosion of freedom. Paper collage is both a medium I use and a support to my paintings. It's an important part of my practice and has been instrumental in the design of my work and the investigation of colour relationships. I've been making collages since 2003 as both finished works and as adjunct preparatory work for my paintings. Many of my paintings were made using collages as studies, and many collages were made using the painted compositions as their inception. I use coloured paper a lot, both when planning my work and when problem solving. I can test combinations with paper. To me, it's like a found object. The colour is found. Its existing hues have not been mixed to match that colour chart in my head, so having to use what's there kickstarts me out of my comfort zone. I'm often asked whether I paint my paper as Miss T-Stick with these magnificent collages, but I steer away from this as I wouldn't be finding new variations in colour if I did. I'm saying this when buying my paper, I still have the freedom to choose my colours, but obviously the selection is restricted and the colours are usually more saturated than what I would actually use. Countercurrent, my 2014 show at Gallerysmith, which is where I now show, had both biomorphic organic paintings and corresponding to those were what I call fractured works. I'll show you. The new fractured work came about unexpectedly through the creation of the collages I was using to prepare through studies for my paintings. As I was cutting the rounded organic shapes which were to make up my compositions, I found I was left with coloured offcuts which formed the negative shapes of my original forms. I decided to use these corresponding shapes to make their own collages, and these also served as studies for further paintings. These floating forms which made up these compositions formed yet another further explosion of the grid. There was now even more openness. Since then, I've pushed these fractured floating works further by having overlapping, transparent and valid shapes making up the compositions. In preparation to show Countercurrent, I had a small film made which shows the making of the work in my studio, which I thought you might like to see.
See the little play, the little triangle?
I'm pleased with the work I've made here at the AUW, and you can see how comfortably it sits with my general art practice. The attention to specific colour and surface, the defined shapes, the necessary adaptation as I negotiate the trials and tribulations is all familiar. I've included felt as a second material to the needle point I've used, and you can see how closely this sits to my collage making. I've even spent time in the colour lab, thanks Tony, and have experimented with dyeing the felt in order to try to replicate that elusive colour in my head. It's all been a wonderful experience. When thinking about this talk a couple of days ago, I reminded myself that I should keep it in the spirit of the Australian Tapestry workshop. Therefore, to wind up this yarn, I hope we haven't lost the thread of what I've been saying, and that I haven't embroidered the talk or coloured it with too much detail. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Does anyone have any questions?
I'm just wondering if your studio assistant is also the filmmaker's assistant.
Absolutely. The furry one? Yeah.
How do the titles for your work, like where do they, is that just an intuitive decision or?
There's one painting, there's one painting called Virginia, for example, that's in here, but I don't know. Anyway, there's a square painting. I don't know, gosh.
You can skip back with the back arrow.
So that one's like a red triangle.
I think that one, for example, when I did that painting, it didn't have the name as I was making it, but as I was making it, I thought it looked very architectural, and I thought it kind of reminded me of a room, and then I started thinking of my studio space, and I started thinking of Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own, which is why I got Virginia. So often the names are sort of related. They just come about through the making of the work.
Yeah, because you have one that says a Tarkine or
Tarkine.
Tarkine, yeah, what is that?
That was because it reminded me, because it's so tall, it reminded me of the forests. It's the Tackle forest. So, yeah, I mean, some names are probably more interesting than others. But,
What practice did seem like us? We haven't been here when we've been in Penang. Oh, have you been here when we've been in Penang? Because the way you're drawn to your campus and then
it's very,
It's
I honestly
very,
find
very
everything
similar,
so similar. I really do.
yeah.
So,
oh, it's
colour
lovely
mixing
seeing
and-
that film. That's great. Yeah.
Do you think you'll ever go back to figurative? Since you started there and you've gone right through to really quite sort of that strict grid that you managed to break out of, and now you're so fluid again. I wonder.
I can't.
Do you
Honestly,
think you might?
I don't think so, because as I said, the subject that I was representing really wasn't important to me. It was just the sort of the placement of colours, tones. Maybe that
Yeah, I kind of see figurative stuff going on in there.
Yeah,
like
that's
there's
what
a sense of gesture and
Yeah,
like a fluidity of the body.
that's what I was
yeah,
thinking.
but that's what you're putting into it, right?
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
you know, so, I mean, that's fun. That's good.
Yeah.
So,
I know what happens next. It's like with Lloyd Rees and Monet and everyone, it just gets softer and softer and softer.
As your eyesight gets. Yeah, it'd be interesting. Because I'm still, I mean, as I said, I don't see them as hard edges, but they are defined. They are defined edges.
And it's still going beyond the picture frame. It's still there's still that continuous, the continuing out.
Yes. That's true. It's not like you have a space or an object.
Cool. Thanks everybody.
Thank you very much.